Vice Chair Moss. Yanine, has she been promoted?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I apologize.
Not sorry about that. Madam President Shevlin?
Here. I mean, yes.
Supervisor Barger, I guess absent for now. Member Hepburn?
Yes.
Member Jacobowski?
Yes.
Member Mahmood?
Yes.
Member Morales?
Yes.
Member Melendez?
Yes.
Member Sandoval? Absent.
Okay, thank you very much. And did you catch Paul, because he needed to be promoted also?
I'm in, thank
Here
you.
you are, okay, because we need you here very soon. All right, so we are on our action items, and we have number 7 here, which is the legislative priorities. So before we proceed with this, Eric, have we received any public comments on this item?
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments on this item.
Okay, please proceed then.
Thank you, Chair Lyons. Staff is recommending the Capital Projects and Construction Committee to recommend to the Governing Board adopt the 2022 Capital Projects, Construction, and Transportation Legislative Priorities intended to inform and guide the legislative policy and also programmatic actions and the positions taken by the San Gabriel Valley COG over the course of the 2022 calendar year. Paul Hubler, Director of Government and Community Relations, will now provide a brief presentation. And Paul?
Thank you, Eric. Madam Chair, members of the board, happy to present. First, if we could go to the next slide, I wanted to just give a rundown, then the next slide, a rundown on our accomplishments over the course of 2021, the calendar year. And this pretty much summarizes much of this you already know about, but I think it's worth sort of going back over it just to spotlight some of our key accomplishments. And the number 1 at the top of the list, and this really is a credit to your project management staff, your engineers that prepared and submitted the applications for the state Section 190 program funds. We were awarded the maximum possible for a single project for the Montebello Boulevard project out of that program, so $15 million over the course of 3 fiscal years. And then the Turnbull Canyon project was also awarded $5 million for a total of $20 million for the projects. That's key really for us. And those funds are available not only for construction, but also for pre-construction activities. The second item on there is from last week. And that was an LA Metro Board motion that directed Metro staff to assist the COG in securing the funding to close the budget gap for the unfunded base projects. It's really 3 key projects: Montebello Boulevard, Turnbull Canyon, and the Pomona at-grade pedestrian crossing safety improvement projects. So we have a meeting scheduled in follow-up to last week's Metro Board meeting. We have a meeting scheduled with Metro Board staff or Metro staff tomorrow to go over. They want to know what our funding strategy has been and what we anticipate in the future and possibility of closing the funding gap. This I'll get into later during the chief engineer's report, but this is really crucial for us to avoid losing some of these state funds that are programmed for the 2 grade separation projects not yet under construction. And then the third item there is we did support LA Metro submitted an application for the federal infra grant program and was awarded this summer $30 million from that program for the 5760 project. So that's great news. The other item is we did support the bipartisan federal infrastructure bill, which was passed by Congress and signed by the president. You see it's going to have significant funding increases for a variety of programs, some of which we've applied for, others of which are new, a new grade separation program, a new mega projects grant program. And so those will take a little longer to get up and running because they'll have to develop funding, application guidelines for those programs. And then if we could go to the next slide. We also prepared and submitted congressional earmark requests on behalf of the ACE projects, the 5760, and supported a request submitted by the city for the Gold Line pedestrian bridge. The ACE project requests, unfortunately, were not successful. They were not included in the bills. Congress, though, has, rather than adopt the annual appropriations bills, which included these earmarks, they've been unable to reach agreement on the appropriations bill. Not because of these earmarks, but what they did pass was a continuing resolution, which is essentially is an extension of the existing funding levels up until February of next year. So we won't know for sure on, for instance, the Gold Line Ped Bridge until sometime in February, whether or not that's included. The SR 5760 project is subject to the Build Back Better legislation, which, as you know, the bipartisan infrastructure bill signed by the president did not include any of the earmarks. So those were put in through a placeholder in the Build Back Better bill, which is the budget reconciliation bill. Again, we don't have agreement on that, but has passed the House, and it has to be taken up in the Senate. So we'll keep an eye on that, and that would determine whether or not the 5760 were to receive the funding earmark that was submitted by our members of Congress. And then that final item, next to final item, is supported the Newsom administration proposal to direct $500 million for grade separations. That unfortunately was not funded due to a legislative impasse. There will be an opportunity to take this up again in January, and we're going to be reaching out to the Newsom administration and California State Transportation Agency staff to indicate that we still are prepared to submit applications jointly with LA Metro. We have reached an agreement with them, with staff, to submit applications, and we're prepared to do that if the program is funded. And then finally, we supported two ongoing studies, VMT and the transit feasibility study, which is ongoing. If we could go to the next slide. So our goals, and really at the top, is to continue to submit and advocate for funding requests, grant applications, earmarks, programmatic funding, which would be beneficial to projects both assigned to the COG as well as those that are supported by the COG in the Sangamo Valley. Supporting and some of these newer goals were recommended by the Transportation Committee. We double referred essentially these legislative program goals to the Transportation Committee and to this committee because of the overlap. And so some of these came out of transportation. I think this is one: increased funding for active transportation programs. It's always important, of growing importance in our region and elsewhere. Dedicated funding for transportation demand management programs, preserve and maintain the goods movement infrastructure, and include active transportation as a component of transportation projects. The other the other bullet points are basically continuations of previously articulated legislative program goals. With that, we could move on to the next slide. At the federal, again, we've got the advocacy for funding is really always at the top of our list for our programs and projects. We're also proposing to expand public transit projects and services, both by bus and rail. We're sort of engaged in the beginning phase of that with the Sangamo Valley Transit Feasibility Study, which is looking at the possibility of bus and rail improvements and projects within the southerly portion of the Sangamo Valley. And then the next italicized support funding, including increased transparency for the infra program. So the support funding, we see that in the bipartisan bill, the funding was increased substantially. It's not quite a doubling of the amount. I think it goes from 5 billion to 8 billion over a 5-year period. So it's a significant increase already in the infra program. With that program's always vastly oversubscribed. I think it's $12 requested for every $1 awarded. So even the increase from 5 billion to 8 billion is not likely to satisfy the increased demand for the funding. So this will continue to remain an important advocacy point for us. And then support legislation and efforts to minimize aircraft noise. Again, that came out of the Transportation Committee. As my understanding is that with the rerouting of flight patterns coming into LAX, approach patterns, that there's been increased noise impacts in the San Gabriel Valley, particularly in the, as I understand it, the Monterey Park area. So we'll be continuing to monitor that as an area for approval. And then finally, we're going to continue to work with our federal representatives and legislative coalitions in Washington, do advocacy in Washington, D.C. I think that's my final slide. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Paul. I see that Diana has her hand up, so she has a question. Why don't you go first?
Thank you. I have two. If you could go back to your first slide, Paul, and this is regarding the identified pots of money for various types of transportation project in the new federal bill. Yeah, this is the slide, last bullet. I assume that the funds that are identified are allocated on a national basis. Do we yet know whether or not funds within these programs will be allocated on a statewide basis, or are applications going to be competitively submitted by various project proponents within states?
So if I understand, so that all of these programs are discretionary grant programs administered by DOT. So, and these, for the most part, the applicant eligibility is pretty wide open, including cities, councils of government, COGS could submit applications. For instance, infra, we've previously submitted multiple applications. The Raise Tiger Bill, those are just the previous names of that program, which is currently under this administration called the Raise program. We've submitted applications there. They're open to discretion. They're open to applications in that program for highway projects, transit projects, streetcars, bike paths. That's a very broadly based program that previously was appropriated every year, every budget cycle. But now for the first time, it's been authorized in this bill at that $7.5 billion amount. So
Paul, let me rephrase my question to make it more precise. So for example, within the new mega projects grant program at $5 billion, will the state of California, and for that matter, for the other programs, will the state of California be allocated a specific amount within that program that it then divvies out to its various agencies, or is it a competitive program for all parties that are interested in submitting an application, and we compete with other entities from throughout the country for an allocation of the $5 billion in that program?
yeah, it's the latter. It's open. It's completely open. And the state may want to try to limit the number of applications, but it's really up to the federal government to make that call. And in the previous examples, I mean, for the infra program, the RAISE program, there have been multiple cities that have submitted applications. Sometimes the US DOT is interested in whether or not California DOT is willing to support your application. So, that's where the State Department can make a difference. But I would expect these to be wide open. What the federal limits typically are through these programs is no more than 20%, say, of the amount made available can go to any one state. So it's not, California wouldn't soak up. We may have the greatest need, frankly, in some of these programs, especially the infra, the freight program, but they limit, the way DOT does it is they limit how much can go of that total amount made available can go to any one state. And sometimes they have rural urban splits. So urban states get a certain amount, rural states get a certain amount. That was particularly the previous administration really emphasized the rural states and awarding funding to the rural states. So we'll have to watch whether any of these the guidelines on any of these programs are changed by DOT. But yeah, to answer your question, no, these are pretty much a free for all.
Okay, well, that's good news, because I saw that with respect to the specific allocation, and I'm not sure what programs were identified in specific allocations where we were told, or it was identified in articles, California is going to get X amount, I forget how much. It's less than what our state as a whole contributes in the way of revenue to the federal government. So this is an opportunity maybe to claw some of that back. So that's good news, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
appreciate that.
California kind of underperforms or is underappreciated when it comes to, AB anywhere but California. The ABC formula sometimes applies. And the only program that I've listed here, and this is not only a fraction of the programs, but these are the key ones that I thought would be of interest to the San Gabriel Valley. The only one that would be allocated by formula is that National Highway Freight Program. And so California gets a share of that. And I don't have the number, but it's going to be significant. What California does with those program funds, rather than direct them to Caltrans, they put it into the state's discretionary grant program for trade corridor projects. It's called
Paul and Diana, this is very interesting stuff. We just are really short on time today, and so if I could ask Diana to go ahead and ask her second question, and then we can see if other people have questions.
I would be happy to. So my second question pertains to the identification of the 5760 as a subject of a funding ask, because I thought we had previously been told that the project was fully funded. Or would the funds, if allocated, displace some other funds?
Yeah, no, LA Metro prepared that funding out. Is that what you're talking about, the 5760 funding application?
Right. So I thought that you had told us previously that we believe, based upon our current construction estimates, and I know that things can change and there's going to be a lot of competition now that there is more money for infrastructure, but I thought you had previously told the committee that the project is fully funded. So I was surprised to see it, and I think it might have been on the last slide, identification of 5760 as being the subject of a future funding request. And so I was wondering, was I incorrect in believing that 5760 is fully funded, or would the funds, if received, must have been the prior slide, displace funds so that the funds could be freed up for something else?
Essentially the latter part.
That's fine. That's all I need.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on then, if that's okay. Does anybody else have a question on the legislative program goals? Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So then we need to have a motion to approve item 7.
Motion to approve.
Second, Moss.
Thank you. So first by Hepburn, second by Moss. Could we take roll call, please?
Charlotte, please display your real-time tracking.
Yes. Okay. Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss,
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger, Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Member Sandoval. Absent.
Okay, very, very good. And again, I'm sorry to cut off the conversation, so maybe can take it up on a sideline. Next, we have item number 8, the agreement with the National Railroad Services for railroad flagging. Have we had any public comments on this?
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments.
Okay, let's have the presentation, please, then.
Thank you, Chair Lyons. Staff is recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to execute agreement number 21-30 in an amount not to exceed $1,541,000 to National Railroads Safety Services. Through the later presentation, I will abbreviate it as NRSS, to provide railroad flagging services for the Fullerton Road grade separation project. A brief background on the agreements with Union Pacific Railroad, justifications for issuing the contract, and also the actual contract amount are contained in the staff report. During my pre-meeting briefings with several members, a question was raised about NRSS, their obligation in case they fail to provide timely flagging service, and if we should include any liquidated damage clause in the contract. After discussing with General Counsel David DeBerry, we would like to provide a response that if NRSS fails to show up after we request flagging services, it would be a breach of their contractual obligation. Section 7 of the agreement clearly states that contractor shall at all times faithfully and competently perform all services described herein. Under generally applicable contract law, the contractor will be held responsible for if we suffer damages due to their breach. Although the scenario of flaggers not showing up is unlikely, if, however, it occurs, we will be able to come up with the actual delay cost to the project instead of using an estimate. Therefore, we do not think a liquidated damage clause is necessary as part of this contract. I would also like to point out that on November 8th, the executive director issued a contract in the amount of $60,000 to NRSS under her contract authority. The limited contract was deemed immediate and necessary to enable NRSS flagging services in support of Sgvcog's construction activities before a full contract is approved by you today. The authorization is reported on page 38 of this agenda package. With that, staff will be glad to answer any additional questions you may have on this item. Otherwise, this concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Eric. Does any member have any questions on this item? Okay, I do not see any raised hands on this, so we need a motion to approve, please.
Motion to approve, Shevlin.
Thank you, Shevlin. Second.
Moss, second.
Thank you, Moss. Could we take roll call, please?
Charlotte, please proceed.
Okay. Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss,
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger, absent. Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Member Sandoval, absent.
Okay, thank you very much,
I don't-
Charlotte. We're now on item number 9, the task order number 2 for WSPA for construction services. Have we had any public comment on this?
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments.
Very good. Let's proceed with the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Lyons. Staff is recommending to the committee to authorize the executive director to issue task order number 2 in the not to exceed amount of $20,351,290 to WSP USA for providing construction management services for the interchange improvement project, which is the second phase of the State Route 5760 Confluence Choke Point Relief Program. A brief background on the project scope. funding agreements with Los Angeles Metro and the committee's prior approvals of the selection of WSP USA for providing construction management services are contained in the staff report. When staff recommended to the committee on June 28th of this year for issuing task order number 1 to WSP USA for pre-construction activities, we also advised the committee that task order number 2 will be presented to the committee for approval by the end of 2021. Under the current funding agreement between Metro and San Gabriel Valley COG, there is insufficient budget for WSP's proposed CM services for the entire 62 month of project duration. The recommended task order number 2, not to exceed the $20,351,290 will be locked down for the cost of for the duration of 52 months. That is from July 2022 to November of 2026. Once the actual construction contract is awarded in summer of 2021, Metro will establish the actual life of the project budget and amend the funding agreement with San Gabriel Valley COG. We will then recommend an amendment for an additional $3.9 million for WSP's construction management for the remaining 10 months of award. I would also like to note that we accidentally left out the word million after 270 in describing the approximate construction amount on page 18. And lastly, I also would like to acknowledge and express my appreciation to Member Mahmood, her comments regarding the attachment. Going forward, we will start hyperlinking all relevant pages in a contract for your reference. With that, that concludes my presentation, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question on this? Okay, I see no hands up, and good idea, Diana, on the hyperlink. Okay, I guess we're ready for a motion then.
Motion.
I do have very
Okay, all right.
quick. It's
Yes,
not a
go ahead.
question, but just a comment. For something like approval of the $20 million, I do read the attachments, and I appreciate Eric acknowledging the omission for this, but I'm going to abstain because it's such a significant amount, $20 million. I'm not comfortable approving this without having had the opportunity to review the attachment. So I just wanted to explain why I'm doing that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got it. Anybody else have a question? Okay, may I have a motion, please?
So
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And it-
Thank you. Diana, is your question over, or do you have another question? Your hand's still up. Okay, just checking. All right.
Thank you.
Could we please have roll call?
Charlotte, please proceed.
Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss,
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger, absent. Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Abstain?
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Member Sandoval, absent.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now on to the fun one, the preview of the hearings to consider resolutions of necessity for the parcels along the 5760 Confluence Choke Point. Do we have any public comments on this, Eric?
Let me confirm with Charlotte. I'm not aware that we receive any public comments up to the minute of our meeting. Charlotte, could you confirm?
We have not received any comments.
Very good. Let's have the presentation then.
Thank you, Chair Lyons. Staff will present a preview of the hearings to consider resolutions of necessity for parcels for the State Route 5760 Confluence Choke Point Relief Program. Our Assistant General Counsel, Casey Trapasonian, will first outline the process. Renee Cornell, Project Manager, will then walk through each parcel with the committee. Casey?
Good morning, Chair Lyons, members of the committee. I have some brief introductory remarks to make regarding the resolutions. There are a total of 6 resolutions of necessity before the committee today. This introductory report will only be given once, and it will apply to all 6 resolutions. The specific facts concerning each resolution of necessity will be provided by the project manager, Renee Coronel. Pursuant to the bylaws of the COG's governing board, the committee is to initially consider all resolutions of necessity and determine whether to make a recommendation to the governing board as to whether the governing board should consider adoption of each resolution of necessity. Under the bylaws, if a property owner and/or their representative appear before the committee today, such appearance is deemed to have been made to the governing board. This is the first time that the COG has followed this 2-step process, which was instituted when the governing board adopted the 11th amended and restated bylaws in April of 2021. Adoption of a resolution of necessity is a required precursor to the filing of action to acquire property by eminent domain. The eminent domain law requires that the governing body of a local agency make specified findings before adopting the resolution of necessity, and the determination of the committee today is to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to make the findings, and if so, recommend that the resolution of necessity for each property be considered by the full governing board. Today, you will receive staff reports on 6 resolutions of necessity. The evidentiary support for the findings is found in the staff report and will further be presented by the COG's project manager, Renee Coronel. The findings that must be made are as follows. The public interest and necessity require the proposed project. The project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The property is necessary for the proposed project. The COG has made the offer to purchase the property as required by section 7267.2 of the Government Code. The necessary notice of hearing to consider adoption of the resolution of necessity has been given as required by section 1245.235 of the Code of Civil Procedure, and that the project complies with CEQA. As to the last finding, the project was analyzed under both CEQA and, because there is federal funding involved, the National Environmental Policy Act, which is the federal equivalent to CEQA, otherwise known as NEPA. A final environmental impact report under CEQA and a finding of no significant impact under NEPA were completed in December of 2013. Caltrans served as a lead agency under both CEQA and NEPA and adopted the final EIR and executed the finding of no significant impact. Pursuant to a cooperative agreement between LA Metro and the COG is taking the lead on coordinating utility relocations, acquiring right-of-way, and project construction. Prior to acquiring property that may be subject to eminent domain, the acquiring agency is required to hire an independent appraiser to conduct an appraisal of the property. The full amount of that appraisal and a summary of the basis therefore must be provided to the property owner. In addition, the COG is required to offer the property owner up to $5,000 to conduct its own appraisal. As noted in the staff reports, the appraisal offer was made to the applicable property owners. As of the date of this meeting, an agreement has not been reached between the COG and the property owners on the purchase price, but negotiations are ongoing. It is important to note that the price offered for the property is not a subject of this proceeding. The committee's role is to determine whether an offer was made in accordance with the Government Code, not to determine the value of the property being acquired. This matter will be heard and considered by the governing board at its meeting on January 20th, 2022. The recommendation of the committee today, along with the minutes of the meeting and the full text of any public or property owner comments and submitted documents, will be forwarded to the governing board. The governing board will then consider the resolutions of necessity, each of which must be adopted by a 2/3 vote of the governing board. That concludes my opening remarks. I believe I will turn it over to Renee to give his presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. I'll be doing a brief presentation on the resolution and necessities to be presented and considered under this motion. Here's a quick project overview. It's a large project area. This project, if we're looking at Grand Avenue in the middle, this project goes a mile to the west and a mile to the east. So it's those are the project limits. The way this project is broken down is, to simplify it, is around 4 bridges. On the 57, we'll be adding a bridge, which will ease the traffic onto the 57. On the 60 freeway, typically right now, if you have to get on the 60 and get off on Grand, you have to go 4 lanes. So we will have a new bridge that will go over the existing freeway and its own dedicated bridge to get off on Grand Avenue. The off-ramp. The existing Grand Avenue bridge will be replaced in 2 stages, so traffic will be impacted, but we'll be able to go across. And lastly, once you get onto the Diamond Bar Boulevard area, there will be a 4th bridge. This will allow for traffic that gets on Grand Avenue through the freeway, not to travel 4 lanes. It can go straight and continue on the 60 freeway. Next slide. Yep. As you can see, those are the proposed bridges in alignment. Next slide.
I'm pushing them through. Sorry, I should have.
Yeah, no worries. This project is in the public interest, and we are required to acquire these properties. This project has been designed in a way that will be most compatible with the public and least private injury. The acquisition of these interests are necessary for the project. And as Cassie mentioned, we have made offers to purchase all these interests in the property. Next. Some of the design options we considered early on in the project was to widen the freeway on the other side. And that is not feasible because you have to remove the shoulder on the number 1 lane. But you'd have to shift the traffic on the other side. So you'd be touching both sides of the freeway. Another option was sloping the property, the freeway towards the property owners. But as you know, with the slope, you have to do a safe slope, a 2-to-1 rise. So that would have required more property to be taken, or we could have done nothing. But this confluence is very dangerous. This last year, I believe there have been 2 fatal accidents. So something has to be done pretty soon about this. And in design, as obvious, vehicle movement was considered, impacts to residents and businesses. And in terms of property acquisitions, at very minimal, as you can see in the next slide, it's not too much of a takings. These are the resolution necessity, 2104 through 2109, and I will go into brief detail on each property. Next slide. For the first one, 2104, Akbar Alley, currently it's an existing restaurant, as you can see in the front. Next slide. For this property, there will be three interests that will be acquired. The first one is a temporary construction easement. The second one is a utility easement. And the third one is an aerial easement. The utility easement, there is an Edison power pole lines that will be in the back of their parking lot. An aerial easement that is required for the new bridge towards Diamond Bar Boulevard. Caltrans staff needs to, in the event they need to do any maintenance to the bridge, they need to be access the property through the back. And last one is a temporary construction easement, which when we're going to be doing this work, we have to access the property. Once we get out of the property, we will restore it to what it was in its original condition. Next slide, please. AP Diamond Bar, currently it's an existing daycare center and several other businesses. In this one, we will also be acquiring a drainage easement, temporary construction easement, and a fee. Next slide. For the new alignment of the Diamond Bar ramp to the eastbound 60, as you can see, there's that green shape that is temporary construction easement. So when we're in the back of the property, accessing their backyard, back property back and forth, and then the 2 little slivers are for the retaining wall. That will be an easement we need to maintain it if anything gets clogged up due to the flow of the water. And last one, there is that orange triangle, and that is fee. That is a property interest that we will be acquiring from them. It's very, very minimal. Once it's said and done, that's the only part of the property that we'll be taking. The temporary construction easement, once construction is over, we will not need. The only thing we will need for maintenance purposes is those maintenance easements. but it's something very typical, like in your backyard. If there's a power pole, sometimes Edison comes and knocks and says, "Can we access your backyard?" And typically, they'll ask for permission, and that's what that's for. Next slide. The next one is Aries. It is an existing hotel. It is on the 60 freeway, and we will be requiring a fee, temporary construction and grading easements, a retaining wall footing and maintenance easement, and a sewer easement. Next slide. If you can see, the orange portion is what we will be acquiring from the Aries Hotel in fee, which will be now become part of the public right-of-way. Currently, it is an existing slope. After that, we will be acquiring temporary construction and grading easements to do the work for the retaining wall. After that, there will be a footing easement. Since we have to realign the freeway, there will be a retaining wall on the other side of the freeway. And once it's constructed, Caltrans crews also need some sort of access to it in case some drainage gets clogged up and whatnot. And the green portion of work, we will be working in their parking lot. That is a temporary construction easement. There is a sewer line we have to construct. And the temporary construction easement for doing the sewer work is around 30 days, I believe. But once that sewer line is installed, the trench, we will backfill it and return it to its original condition. Next slide. Resolution 2107, DBJ 2018 LLC and Rotundi Grayman Family Trust. That is currently an existing restaurant. Next slide. All the work that we will be doing is in the back of their property. There are 3 interests to be acquired. There is an aerial easement for the bridge that we will be doing off the, for the 60 eastbound bypass. It's very minimal, but it's just the overhang of the bridge in case Caltrans crews need to do some sort of maintenance. The whole green square is the temporary construction easement. As I said earlier, we have to go back there. We may do some work and we will restore it once it's said and done. It is not a permanent one. And lastly, the permanent one in the back is a utility easement, and that is for Edison poles. Next slide. This is not the last one. 2108 Grand Diamond Bar Properties. This is currently an empty parking lot. Next slide. This view does show an existing building, but that is no longer there. All the work that we will be doing is on the Grand Avenue side, which is that green hatched mark. We will be putting up a retaining wall, which will lead to the new Grand Avenue Bridge. So in terms of the interest that we are acquiring for this is, since we are doing a retaining wall, typically you like access on both sides of a wall. So for this one, in case we do need to do some sort of maintenance, it will be on that side of the property. And there will also be losing a driveway. So that is something that is being considered in the appraisal. Next slide. And this is the last one. It is 2109 Tranquil Gardens. It is a empty lot. Next slide. There is an Edison line that will be going through the south of the freeway. And that little blue sliver is what we will be acquiring for utility easement. So it'll probably just be an overhead line going over their property. Last slide. As Cassie mentioned, we have made offers on all the properties. Those are the dates we have made offers. We are still negotiating with the property owners. This is due to our schedule. This is very schedule driven, so we have to start this process. Mark, anything else to add? Mark Mendoza, he's worked with us previously on the ACE projects. On this project, he is our right-of-way project manager.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. Just to point out, of the 6 parcels under consideration today, 2 we expect to reach a negotiated settlement, quite possibly before the hearing with the full COG. 2 other parcels we haven't yet entertained or received engagement negotiations. This process may precipitate that. And then the other 2 or last 2, the property owners have counsel that they've representing them, and we're working very closely with Mr. Farrington, eminent domain counsel for the COGS team, to see about bringing about negotiated settlement. So we're very much trying to avoid eminent domain proceedings if at all possible. Thank you.
And that concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions.
And Chair Lyons, that concludes our presentation. We'll be glad to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Great, and I see we have a few questions. I'm going to go first here. Anything that any property that we're temporarily taking on any of these 6 different properties, is that going to cause any of these to close their business?
No.
Okay, it looks very, very minor, but of course, I'm not the property owner. So they'll be able to continue to conduct their business.
That is correct. The one where we are taking parking spots is the Aries, but it's only a certain amount of parking spots. We're not taking the whole thing. And that's when we're doing the parking lot work to install a sewer line.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hepburn.
Just a real quick one. I've noticed that on some of the communication, and by the way, thank you, staff. I appreciate all this information. It's a lot, but very, very informative, and it's very upfront. My question was actually to Mark Mendoza. I was just curious, what are we holding now for property assets that we have? I know we're selling off certain ones to utilize for some contracts to buffer some of the contracts. What are we, do we have a dollar value on current property that we have in our wheelhouse?
The agency has currently multiple parcels that is identified as excess to its needs, and there's a Surplus Lands Act that has to be complied with, and that is in the process of happening in San Gabriel, in the city of Industry, in the city of Pomona, and tens of millions of dollars. I would say just off 25 million thereabouts that is in the process of being disposed of currently.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Are there other questions? I see no other hands up. There are no other questions? Okay, then. In talking to
Madam Chair, I think Eric wanted to say something.
Oh, very good. Go ahead, Eric.
in response to Member Hepburn's inquiry about surplus parcel, and a similar question also was raised by Member Mahmood. Staff will prepare a separate report in the next couple of weeks and explain to the committee regarding the status. So I hope that will set aside your potential additional question on this item on the surplus parcel from this 6057 project that you're reviewing currently.
Thank you, Eric. Are there other questions? I don't see any hands raised.
Move the recommendation and very informative presentation, Renee. It was very clear. Thank you.
It was
Second.
very clear. We're moving all 6 at one time. Is that correct?
That's the intent, yes.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
I get a second.
Thank you very much. Could we please have roll call?
Charlotte, please proceed.
Okay. Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss,
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger is absent. Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Member Sandoval is absent.
Okay, very good. That was very efficient. Thank you. All right, now we are on to item number 11, the utility relocation. Eric, have we received any public comment on this?
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments on this item.
Okay, let's proceed then.
Thank you, Chair Lyons. Staff is recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to execute an agreement with Southern California Edison, or SCE, for relocation of existing SCE facilities as part of the Diamond Bar Golf Course project, the first phase of the State Route 5760 Confluence Choke Point Relief Program. A brief background on the funding agreements with the Los Angeles Metro and the justification for an agreement with SCE are contained in the staff report. And during my pre-committee briefings, a question was received that if the San Gabriel Valley COG could enter into an agreement with SCE on behalf of Los Angeles Metro. Upon further discussion with General Counsel David DeBerry, we will revise the utility relocation agreement as contained in the report to become an agreement between San Gabriel Valley Council of Government and the SCE. Staff will be glad to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, this concludes my presentation and ready for your action.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions out there?
To approve.
I don't see any hands raised. So Mr. Hepburn,
Second.
to approve.
Second.
Second by Mahmood. Thank you very much.
I assume that the motion is with the proposed revision that the contract would be entered into by the COG with Southern California Edison.
That is correct.
Should we
Asking the mover.
put that into the motion maybe?
Yes.
Okay, so say it again so we can capture that.
Motion to approve the COG entering into a contract with Southern California Edison for utility relocation services.
Okay, very good. So it's been moved and seconded. We have roll call, please.
Charlotte, please proceed.
Okay. Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss.
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger, absent. Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Member Sandoval is absent.
Okay, thank you very much. We are now on item number 12, right? Task order 4. Do we have any public comments on this?
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments on this item.
Okay, we're ready for the presentation then.
Thank you, Chair Lyons. Staff is recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to issue task order number 4, revision number 16, not to exceed $429,000 to Moffett and Nico for providing additional final design services for the Montebello Boulevard grade separation project. In the written report, staff explained the project scope and also design status, and also justification for additional budget for Moffett and Nico to redesign the track and also the rail bridge. Additionally, staff also provided a near-term strategy in addressing the cost increase. Staff is planning to use the proceeds of the surplus property sales to fund the increase in design costs, which is approximately $64,275 as described in the staff report. That concludes my short presentation, and I will be glad to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Thank you, Eric. Are there questions on this item? Okay, I see a hand up by Member Mahmood.
Yes, Eric, the task order, there's 3 links that are referenced for this item, and I think only the last one is relevant. But the task order, which does not unfortunately attach the scope of work, says that there's no revision to the scope of work. And yet I understand that the purpose of the task order is in fact to revise the scope of work, to provide for the additional design work of the structure and substructure as requested by Union Pacific. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I'll move approval with the request that the task order be revised to reflect that it does in fact involve additional scope of work.
Thank you very
second that.
much.
I second that.
Second, you two are quite the team today. Thank you
That's
very much.
important.
Could we please have roll call?
And Charlotte, please proceed.
Okay. Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss,
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger absent, Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Member Sandoval absent.
Okay, thank you very much. On to item number 13, the task order number 3, revision 9 with Moffett and Nickel for final design. Eric, please.
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments. Therefore, I will proceed with a brief presentation.
Thank you.
We are recommending the committee to authorize the executive director to issue task order number 3, revision number 9, not to exceed $88,500 to Moffett and Nickel for providing additional final design services for the at-grade crossing safety improvements for the Montebello corridor grade separation project. In the written report, staff explained the project scope, specifically related to the proposed aerial pedestrian bridge on Maple Avenue over the railroad tracks, and the justification for having Moffett and Nickel to develop an alternative conceptual design in the event the crossing is only as an at-grade safety improvement. Additionally, staff also provided a near-term strategy in addressing the cost increase. Staff is planning to use the proceeds of surplus property sales to fund the increase in design cost, which is approximately $63,573 as described in the staff report. That concludes my brief presentation, and I will be glad to answer any additional questions that you may have.
All right, I'm looking for hands up. I see Member Mahmood with a hand up, please, and then Member Hepburn.
I think that the proposed omission redesign makes an awful lot of sense, but I'm wondering if we have if we have made any type of affirmative statement to the city of Montebello that at this point the COG will not likely approve any further requested redesigns for this particular intersection.
The answer to Member Mahmood is this is not initiated. This redesign request was not initiated by the city. In fact, it is in consultation and discussion with the city leaders, understanding what the city's likely acceptance in terms of what the overall project scope would be. And we felt it's important for us to provide, to conduct an alternative design and to assist them to reach that conclusion that the pedestrian bridge is no longer a preferred alternative in their city. So I think what we're recommending here, the task really is driven by our assessment, knowing the bridge option is not a viable option. Therefore, how do we empower the city to have necessary information in case they want to proceed with a cheaper, more economical option, and also have the ability to obtain the quiet zone eligibility. Therefore, I hope that I explained to Member Mahmood that we do not anticipate additional requests from the city. This particular action is initiated by us to ensure the city can reach their decision in the near future.
Has the city at least expressed support for exploration of this alternative design?
The city has given us a pretty clear indication that the pedestrian bridge is not preferred. So I think their second best option would be the at-grade improvements, like two adjacent crossing. And because we never designed Maple Avenue crossing in that manner, This particular authorization will allow for Martha and Nico to design it, give us the concept, and then prepare all the documentation necessary.
Just one more question then, Eric, based upon your analysis, is there any other viable alternative other than the pedestrian design, other than the at-grade improvements that are going to be examined in this study?
A short answer is no, because the most expensive option would have been a grade separation. And that concept was rejected very early on due to its cost and its impact to its surrounding neighborhood. Therefore, the second best option was the aerial pedestrian bridge, which could also come with additional constraints, which the road must be cul-de-sac. Therefore, the at-grade crossing safety improvements only, that would be the bare minimum, but yet achieve almost as good as safety elements for the entire neighborhood.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Okay, Member Hepburn?
I'm going to echo a few of those. I'll just be honest, I'm a little frustrated because these projects have been going on for some time with design elements. And I mean, you know, we want a bridge, we don't want a bridge. We want to, you know, at-grade crossing as far as a quiet zone. It's like, you know, these dollars are attached to federal and state dollars. It's like they need to get their act together as far as, and I hate to say this, but I mean, let's get your act together. And, you know, if we have a plan, let's put this plan together so that we can all, you know, get it going and get the dollars that need to be funded for it, but also something that's viable for the safety of obviously the children and people will be using those areas. But it's like, it's a little late at the game as far as I'm concerned, but I understand the process, but kind of hard to redesign something after you already wanted to design for something else. And then all of a sudden money's pouring into it for design. And then all of a sudden we're going to change it because we don't want that any longer. It's a little bit frustrating on my part. That's all. Just a comment. And staff.
I would agree. It is definitely frustrating. Does anybody else have a comment or a question on this? Okay, I see no other hands raised. Would somebody like to make oh, Diana, do you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair, I think it might be helpful if the representative from Montebello communicates to his fellow council members the comments that were expressed today. I think that would be helpful.
Oh, I completely agree. Yes. That's,
and with that,
that's Member Melendez.
Thank you. And with that, I'll move approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Second again for Member Hepburn, and Mr. Melendez says that he will communicate that. So that's great. Can we have roll call, please?
Charlie, please proceed.
Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss,
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger absent, Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez.
Yes.
And motion
Member-
passed.
Oh,
Chair Lyons.
Member Sandoval absent.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we are on to item number 14, excuse me, with the calendar. Are there any public comments on this one?
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments on this item.
Okay, take it away, please.
Thanks. Staff is recommending the committee to consider and approve two actions. First one is to adopt the Capital Projects and Construction Committee regular and special meeting schedule for calendar year 2022. Second action is to provide direction on the January 24th, 2022 meeting format. Staff would like to point out that the regular committee meeting is the fourth Monday of each month at 12 o'clock. Due to the compliance with AB 361, staff has identified the following dates for conducting special meetings during the first half of 2022. These dates are January 12th, February 11th, March 10th, and June 22nd. Staff is proposing this special meetings be held via teleconferencing only. The committee may direct staff to hold each special meeting at a different time of the day. For example, if you would like to meet at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning for those special meetings, we will be glad to set it up as long as we can reach a quorum. Last month, staff contacted the city of Diamond Bar and confirmed the availability of windmill room at Diamond Bar City Hall as a suitable venue for a hybrid in-person plus teleconferencing format. Staff is ready to conduct the January 24th regular meeting with a hybrid format as a pilot, but we would like to seek the committee's direction on proceeding with this pilot hybrid mode, or if your preference is to remain the January 24th meeting as a teleconferencing only. That concludes my brief presentation, and I will be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Eric. And for those of you that read the agenda, you realize that the reason that some of these months we need to have a second meeting is because of when the dates fall versus when the general meeting for the COG falls. So we're really kind of stuck with that. We don't have to do it at noon. We could do it at 8 or 9 or really any other time if that's more convenient. So I see Member Hepburn has his hand up.
I would actually just make a motion that we test the hybrid model out in Diamond Bar on the 24th. And after the test, we can decide how and what works best for all of us. But I just thrown it out there, see if we can.
I'd be happy to second that motion.
Okay, thank you. So then it sounds like we're taking this as two separate votes then, right? Because we haven't considered the calendar.
That I don't know.
Okay.
You're correct.
That's correct, Chair Lyons. We need you to, the committee should make a motion and adopt the calendar first. And then you can then adopt a separate motion or as part of the motion to give us affirmative direction.
Okay. All righty. Thank you very much. What do we all think about for discussion purposes, what do we think about the calendar? Do you want to keep those extra meetings at noon? Is that what's going to work best for you all, or nobody has a preference? If there's no preference, we should just keep it at noon. I see Member Jacobowski with their hand up.
Yes, I associate this group with noon, so it sticks in the mind a little bit easier.
Okay, Member Shevlin?
The only comment I have those Birch meetings through, I think, March. On the January 12th date, I assume that staff checked to see if that was conflicted with the Birch meeting. I'm assuming. I think that January 12th date is a January 12th date that is a Wednesday, and that's the
Well, we should be looking at Mondays. January 12th should be a Monday.
Oh, well, then I guess maybe I was looking at the.
I don't have a calendar for next year in front of me, but is January 12th?
Yeah, January 12th. So January 12th of 2022 is a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday. You're right.
Okay.
Chair Lyons, the reason that January 12th is listed in the staff report is because that will be the last day of that existing 30 days effectiveness. So we can host a meeting on January 11th or January 10th, 11th, or 12th, but cannot go beyond 12th. One suggestion that I would offer the committee to consider is that for the special meeting, if you can either agree to the suggested date and then subject to a follow-up Google or Doodle link based on the minimum availability so that we can get a quick quorum for adopting another 30-day resolution. I think that probably could streamline the process without holding up and trying to get some consensus right here, right now for those special meetings.
Chair
just that-
Lyons, this is Charlotte. Marissa has left a message in the chat that the BRCH is an evening meeting on the 12th of
that
January.
works. Yeah,
Okay, yes, Member Shovlin?
I saw that in the chat, so that takes care of that.
Okay, so I don't have that calendar in front of me, but why wouldn't we just make that meeting January 10th? Because then it would be on a Monday.
I have no problem with that. Mondays are always a wishy-washy day, and I get all that stuff done then on Monday, and then we can move forward. But that depends on the consensus.
Okay, well, what about making it the second Monday then, which is what January 10th would be? And then, based on Jakubowski's suggestion, keeping it at noon. And then in addition, trying out the hybrid model as a pilot, to see how this works at Diamond Bar in January.
Madam Chair, I just have a quick question regarding
Yes.
the grid. And that is, would the format for those of us that would be participating remotely be any different from what we're experiencing now? I assume it wouldn't.
Well, it would be the same format. You're just going to be, remote, and other people will be physically at the meeting. So, yeah.
Right.
It's worked very well for our city council since April. And also we have another meeting that both Corey and I attend that's once a month that's doing the same thing that is working well. Member Shovlin, do you have another question?
When is the executive board meeting in January? I'm sorry, I don't have all my calendars in front of me.
That's the 24th.
Not the governing board, the executive board.
Oh, that's a good one.
I don't know, perhaps Marissa knows.
I think it's the 10th, you know what? And I think we moved it to the 10th, Becky,
Yeah, that's what I was
but it will be
thinking.
done by noon.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion then that we go with the second, where necessary, we go with the second Monday of the month for the special meeting, which will be teleconference only and is basically a single item meeting, just so that we can conduct our next meeting after that in either hybrid or remote format. And I also include the pilot meeting on January 24th in Diamond Bar.
Chair Lyons, could
Mhm.
I just make a friendly adjustment? Because
Sure.
you mentioned your motion includes second Monday. In fact, some of the special meeting dates don't fall on second Monday. So I'm going to read it out for based on your direction.
Okay.
The first special meeting will be held on Monday, January 10th. Second special meeting will be held on February 7th. Then the third special meeting will be held on March 7th, Monday. And then the last one will be on June 20th, Monday. And all of the special meetings will be held at noontime via teleconference. Do you think that would be much easier? We will codify that as part of our meeting minutes.
Well, let me
Eric,
just
I
ask
think
you.
you've identified the first Monday.
Right, those several of those are the first Mondays. I don't know, why would we do that? Because like the 7th would be the first Monday.
Once again, so when we do a special meeting on January 7th, they only stretch us all the way by another 30 days. And that's all part of that. We're capped by that 30 calendar days of freshness.
Okay, I get it now. The third time through it went through my head. Did the rest of you get it? We have to do it because of Governor Newsom, I guess is the long and short of it.
Understood.
Okay, so there was a friendly suggestion by Eric, and I agree with that. Is there a second to that laborious motion?
I'll second.
Moss will second.
Okay, I think we'll go with Moss seconded.
Moss is great.
All right, could we please have roll call on this?
Charlotte, please.
Okay. Chair Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moss. Vice Chair Moss,
Yes.
President Shevlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Barger absent. Member Hepburn,
Yes.
Member Jacobowski,
Yes.
Member Mahmood,
Yes.
Member Morales,
Yes.
Member Melendez,
Yes.
Member Sandoval absent.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm actually going to jump ahead to something very important and then we'll come back because we need to take a minute or two to really recognize the service of Deanna Stanley. She is going to be jumping off our meeting shortly. And I think it's really important that we, take a minute and, thank her for all of her work. She has been at ACE and at the COG for 22 and a half years of service. Can you imagine? Very long and successful career in the public sector, working at various agencies with a focus on transportation and mobility throughout the region. She worked at the County Transportation Commission, which was the predecessor to Metro. She worked for Foothill, and then she came to her true love, us, Alameda Corridor East. And she's been with the agency since the inception of the ACE Construction Authority, the first employee that was one of the first employees to be hired. And she's just been instrumental in setting up the ACE office when the agency was created, developing all the administrative policies, office procedures, lease agreements. I mean, just all kinds of things that she was responsible for. She protected us with insurance and basically did anything and everything to make the agency function. And I know a lot of you have worked closely with her over the years. Oh, there she is. Finally, we see her face. Hey, Deanna. She's always very helpful. And definitely to me, she's been so helpful. She's answered any question I've had. She always, is very kind. She's very happy. And Deanna, we're gonna really miss you a lot. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. And I believe we have a plaque for you, but I'm not sure if you have it or not.
Here's the plaque.
All right, let's see. Somebody's holding up the plaque.
I'm holding it. I know it's transparent, but it's a very beautiful plaque. And thank you
there we
very much,
go.
Deanna.
Very
Thank you.
nice. Deanna, we're going to really miss you a lot. Would you like to say anything?
The staff, there's a few staff members here who are egging me on, so forgive me for laughing. Yeah, it's been an incredible journey for me to be part of this organization. My heart is definitely in it. To see the projects go from pushing papers back and forth to shovels in the ground, to see projects completed, that to me was very exciting. And to be able to drive throughout the San Gabriel Valley and see things that we built here, I think that's awesome. I know what's underground and I know the challenges of the project, and to think that we're actually building things next to live railroad tracks is really exciting. Dangerous, but exciting, but it speaks volumes of the staff that we've had over the years. And it's been fun, but it's time. The agency is taking a different direction, I believe, and my time is up. I'm reaching my expiration date.
Never, never, never. Well, thank you, Deanna. Thank you for hanging in till almost the end of the meeting. Thank you for your 22 and a half years of service. And thank you for being just a friendly face. We're going to all miss you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
All right, I'm gone.
All right. You're gone.
Thanks,
But
Deanna.
always in
Thank
our
you.
hearts. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, folks, let's see. We're at the Director of Capital Projects monthly report then.
Chair Lyons, we did not receive any public comments, and also in the interest of time, I understand that many of you have to drop off by 1:30, so I will do a very condensed version. In terms of our monthly report, I also want to acknowledge my conversation with many members and then helping me to shape my script and providing additional information. But I also specifically want to thank Member Mahmood when she inquired about the reasons for us issuing a $447,000 change order to Riverside Construction for the Durfee project grade separation project. Upon further review by the project manager and also contract staff, the actual change order amount and also the payment was only $47,798. There was again a typo that we didn't catch, and I do apologize. Going forward, we'll continue to provide additional explanation for each item under the contracts as part of the director's monthly report. Paul Hubler is going to provide a very important update on the most recent activity action by Metro Board of Directors on ACE funding. Paul?
Thank you, Eric. If we could go to the next slide, and I'll keep this brief. I know we're reaching our time limit. I already touched on this during the presentation on the legislative program for next year. But as you know, we have a funding shortfall on our final 3 projects, the 2 grade separations at Turnbull and Montebello, and then the Pomona pedestrian crossing. The Metro Board of Directors adopted unanimously a motion last week that directed the CEO of Metro and her staff to work with us to try to identify possibilities for filling those funding gaps. It's crucial. The timing is crucial because we have to advance those grade separations into construction by June of this year, meaning we have to bring them before the California Transportation Commission, or we could jeopardize already programmed state funds for those projects. Metro is also going to work with us on project labor agreements for the 2 grade separations, and with the CEOs to report back by March of next year. Next slide, please. So the project labor agreements are, Metro has existing PLAs in place with the Building and Construction Trades Council. That's an umbrella union organization. They reached that in 2012. They renewed it 5 years after that. Prioritizes construction partnerships with labor and the targeted employment of LA County workers. The contractors would be asked to assent to the PLA in the bid package. And this PLA, the idea of a PLA came up because we were discussing with Metro staff their recently initiated into construction grade separation project, Rosecrans Marquardt. That does have, and the Metro PLA does apply to that grade separation. So the thought was there could be benefits to us for those 2 projects to have a PLA in place, and particularly in the area of targeting employment to workers who live in LA County or in the surrounding project areas. It concludes my report. Be happy to answer questions.
Chair Lyons, that concludes our report on the monthly report.
Very good. Then we're on to active construction projects, verbal reports.
Thanks, Chair Lyons. Each of the 3 active construction projects is proceeding according to its schedule. In the interest of time, we will be glad to answer any additional questions that you may have, and also share photos with the committee via email after the meeting. And that concludes my brief remark on this item.
That's perfect. And people can email questions at any time, right? So there you go. All right. We are now at member comments. Do any members have a comment today? I don't see anybody. Let's see here. There we are. Okay, I see a hand up from member Hepburn.
Just real quick, I want to thank everybody for all the hard work they've done. Paul, thank you. Staff, thank you. We're getting a lot of information now that we didn't have before, and it's just it's great information for all of us to know what's going on and how the money's being spent, especially tax dollars. Thank you all.
Very good. Are there any other member comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to just say.
There's one more comment.
Oh, there's one more? Oh, member Jakubowski, please.
Thank you. And I'm simply going to piggyback on what Tim had said and to say that Director Shen does such detailed prep with each of us. It removes so many of the questions I have at my first reading. And it is just a joy to be part of this group because of that. Thank you all.
Oh, very nice. Anyone else?
Ditto. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Very hard.
Lots of dittos. Lots of hard work was done this year, especially by staff, and we really appreciate it. Yes. So
We're
Merry
glad to have
Christmas,
them.
Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in January and then in January again. So,
Merry Christmas,
right.
Happy New
Merry
Year.
Happy
Christmas,
holidays.
everybody.
bye. On to the
Bye,
sanitation
everyone.
board.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.